Alice Through the Looking Glass, Part 1. Looking Glass House. Alice was sitting in a chair, winding up a ball of yarn. Her kitten, Snowdrop, was playing with the yarn, and Alice scolded it for being mischievous. Alice then began to talk to the kitten about her plans for the next day, which include going to see a bonfire. She also talked about how she wished she could play chess with the kitten. Alice then got up on the fireplace and looked through the looking glass. She saw a room that was just like her own drawing room, except that everything was reversed. She imagined what it would be like to live in the looking glass world, and she wondered if the milk there was good to drink. Alice then stepped through the looking glass and found herself in the looking glass world. She was surprised to find that the room was quite different from what she had imagined. The pictures on the wall were alive, and the clock on the mantelpiece had the face of a little old man. Alice also saw that the chessmen were walking around, 2 by 2. Alice was amazed by what she saw, and she began to explore the looking glass world. She met a number of strange creatures, including the White Queen, the Red Queen, and the Cheshire Cat. Alice was watching the Red King and Queen play chess when she heard a noise behind her. She turned around and saw one of the white pawns rolling over and kicking. The White Queen rushed over to the pawn and picked it up, saying that it was her child. Alice helped the White King up from the ashes and dust him off. While Alice was watching the king, she noticed a book lying on the table. She opened it and saw that it was all in a language she didn't know. She turned the pages until she found something she could read. It was a poem about a looking glass book. Alice read the poem and thought it was pretty, but hard to understand. She decided to go see the garden. Alice floated down the stairs and out the door. She was a little dizzy from floating in the air, but she was glad to be walking again in the natural way. The Garden of Live Flowers. Alice was lost in the garden and cannot find her way to the top of the hill. She meets a tiger lily and a rose, who tell her that there is another flower in the garden that could move around like her. Alice asked if she could see her, and the rose said that she would see her soon. Alice then met the Red Queen, who was much taller than she was. The Queen asked Alice where she came from and where she was going. Alice explained that she had lost her way, and the Queen told her that all the ways about here belonged to her. Alice asked the Queen why she had come out to the garden, and the Queen told her to curtsy while she was thinking of an answer. Alice did as she was told, and the Queen told her that she had seen gardens that compared to this one would be a wilderness. Alice looked out over the country and saw that it was divided up into squares by little green hedges. She said that it looked like a large chessboard, and the Queen agreed. Alice is walking with the Queen when they suddenly start running. They run so fast that the trees and other things around them don't move. Alice asks if they're going to get somewhere else, but the Queen says that in this world, you have to run twice as fast as that just to stay in the same place. They stop to rest, and Alice realizes that they've been running in circles. The Queen gives Alice a biscuit and tells her that she'll give her directions when they've walked 2 yards. She then puts pegs in the ground to mark the distances, and at each peg, she gives Alice more instructions. When they reach the last peg, the Queen disappears. Alice realizes that she's a pawn in a game of chess, and that it's time for her to move. Looking glass insects. Alice found herself in a strange world where insects were the size of animals. She saw an elephant making honey and thought it was a bee. She boarded a train and was told she was traveling the wrong way. Alice heard a small voice next to her ear and realized it was a gnat. The gnat told her she didn't like all insects and Alice said she liked them when they could talk. The gnat asked her what insects she liked and she said she didn't rejoice in insects because she was afraid of them. Alice said it was useful to the people who named them, but the gnat said they didn't have names in the wood down below. Alice started to list insects and the gnat told her about a rocking horsefly that was made of wood and lived on sap and sawdust. Alice then went into the wood, where things have no names. She met a fawn who asked her what she called herself, and Alice said she didn't know. The fawn told her that it was a fawn, and Alice realized that she was a human child. Alice then came to a fork in the road, and she saw two finger posts, one marked to Tweedledum's house and the other marked to the house of Tweedledee. Alice realized that they must live in the same house, and she decided to go and ask them the way out of the wood. Tweedledum and Tweedledee. Alice met two fat little men, Tweedledum and Tweedledee. They were arguing about a rattle. Tweedledum claimed that the rattle was new, while Tweedledee said it was old. Alice tried to calm them down, but they refused to listen. Tweedledum challenged Tweedledee to a battle, and Alice agreed to help them dress up. They put on armor and helmets, and then they began to fight. The battle was very confusing, and Alice couldn't tell who was winning. Alice tried to make them stop fighting, but they wouldn't listen. They said they were going to fight until there were no trees left standing. Suddenly, a dark cloud appeared. Tweedledum said, "It's the crow," and the two brothers ran away. Alice ran into the woods to hide. She saw a shawl being blown away by the wind. Wool and water. Alice meets the White Queen, who is very untidy and has a strange way of dressing. The Queen tells Alice that she lives backwards, which means that she can remember things before they happen. Alice says that she is lonely, and the Queen tells her to consider other things instead of crying. She also says that she used to believe 6 impossible things before breakfast. Alice and the sheep rode down a river in a boat made of knitting needles. The sheep kept saying feather, and Alice didn't know why. They passed some scented rushes, and Alice wanted to pick some, but the sheep wouldn't stop the boat. Alice tried to reach the rushes, but they were always too far away. Alice went to get the egg, but it seemed to get further away the more she walked towards it. She realized that everything in the shop was turning into a tree when she got close to it. Wool and water. Alice met Humpty Dumpty on a wall. He told her that he was given a cravat as a UN birthday present. Alice was confused and asked what a UN birthday present was. Humpty Dumpty explained that there are 365 days in a year and only one birthday. This means that there are 364 UN birthdays, which are days when you can receive UN birthday presents. Alice was still confused, but Humpty Dumpty told her that it didn't matter because he was the master of words and could make them mean whatever he wanted. He then asked Alice what she wanted to do next, as he didn't want her to stay on the wall with him all day. Alice asked him to explain the poem Jabberwocky. Humpty Dumpty explained the meaning of each word in the poem. Alice then asked Humpty Dumpty to recite a poem. He recited a poem about a person who is trying to get fish to do something, but they are not listening. After Humpty Dumpty recites the poem, Alice says goodbye and leaves. She thinks that he is the most unsatisfactory person she has ever met.